Hello and good evening, everyone. First, just a quick reminder that we are recording today's presentation and we will be posting this video on YouTube in the future. Thank you all so much for joining us for the second of 3 virtual offerings in the Daemen College Speaker Series hosted by Book Arts and led by faculty from Daemen College's exciting new Leadership and Entrepreneurship in the Arts program dedicated to advancing leadership opportunities in the arts. My name is Nicole Cook, and I'm the Executive Director at the Western New York Book Arts Center. If this is your first time hearing about us, hello, nice to meet you. We are an arts and cultural nonprofit located in the heart of downtown Buffalo's literary corridor, devoted to printing and book-related arts. That includes everything from letterpress and screen print to bookbinding, origami, calligraphy, and more. We are the only publicly accessible studio of our kind in Western New York, and we eagerly welcome all ages and skill levels to come and engage your creative curiosity. I'm joined today by my Book Arts teammates, Melissa Reckon, who you'll hear more about in a little bit, and my co-host for this evening, Education Director Rosemary Williams. She'll be running tonight's Zoom presentation and monitoring the chat. Please feel encouraged to ask questions at any point throughout today's event by typing in the chat box. Rosemary will interject as questions are raised, so your input will help shape tonight's discussion. Don't be shy, but do please stay muted. Today's presentation is the second in a series of 3 workshops hosted by Book Arts in partnership with Daemen College as an introduction to their exciting new Leadership and Entrepreneurship in the Arts bachelor's degree program. Did you know that nationally, the arts and culture section is an $878 billion industry? And the nonprofit sector accounts for 11.4 million jobs. We at Book Arts are a strong proponent of workforce development in the creative sector, and Daemen's new program is such a unique opportunity for creatives working in a variety of media to sustain your practice as an independent business. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce to you today's speaker, Philip Longson. Philip Longson is an internationally published illustrator and education professional from the United Kingdom. Specializing in carefully crafted, narrative-driven pieces that utilize a variety of media, his work spans from meticulous graphite drawings to stylized digital creations. His picture books have focused on atmospheric retellings of traditional folk tales from Scotland for older and international audiences. Philip received his master's in fine art from Edinburgh College of Art. Now based in Buffalo, New York, Philip is assistant professor of visual and performing arts and program director of the illustration program at Daemen College. Philip, take us away.
Thank you, and hello. Thank you everybody for being here. And thank you, of course, to the Book Arts Center for collaborating on this series of talks. I'm sure you heard a lot about the Book Arts Center at the beginning there, but if this is your first experience, then I would definitely encourage you to follow along with their events. And as soon as you're able to get down there and visit, it really is one of the little gems in Buffalo for artists. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here so I can get started with my presentation. Okay, so what I'm going to cover today is I'd like to give you a bit of an overview of what it's like to be an illustrator from a business point of view. So I'll be covering a little bit about how the illustration industry works, which might be a little bit different to how you expect, and then to how you operate as a freelance illustrator. And whilst those things are specific to illustration, that will allow me to touch on a few topics that I think are relevant to all professional artists, and certainly to any artists who are looking to make an income from their artwork in a freelance capacity. So it's going to be a little bit of a whistle-stop tour. I've got quite a lot to get through, so I'm going to jump straight in. So before I start with the main content, I just wanted to cover what illustration is, just because generally when I speak to somebody and I mention I'm an illustrator, it tends to be a little bit of a pause while they think about it. And then they'll say something along the lines of, so what do you actually do? Is it books and stuff? I think that's a pretty common response. For our purposes today, I think it's most helpful to essentially think of illustration as custom artwork. So it's one of the main ways in which it perhaps differs from a business model that you're more familiar with, whereby a studio artist will make their work and then go out and seek an audience or a customer base for that work. As a freelance illustrator, you are working with a client to create customized artwork for them from the start. There are definitely more well-established or well-trodden areas of the industry, definitely publishing, editorial, which is newspapers and magazines and their online counterparts, advertising, package and surface design, which is more interesting than it sounds, I promise, and also public art. So those are some of the more common ways that illustrators will work. But really, it's custom artwork for anybody who needs it. So it's actually a much broader industry than that. And like a lot of freelance artists these days, illustrators are making use of lots of different online platforms and tools to make income from their artwork. So it's not just books and stuff, it's books and lots of stuff. Now, because the artwork is custom, and we're working with the client to create artwork that meets their needs and their audience, that means that illustrators work project to project. And so the vast majority of the illustration industry is freelance. So that means it's quite unusual that you would find an illustrator in a full-time capacity at a company or within a design studio. But that's because each commission or each project that comes through usually requires something quite different. And illustrators are not just sort of jack of trades or jack of all trades artists. So if somebody wanted something more rendered and representational, they might go for somebody like Tim O'Brien. Or if they wanted something more graphic and contemporary, they might go to somebody like Malika Favre. So in as much as illustrators have a brand, their brand is their artwork. It's their artistic voice, it's their ideas. So illustrators are hired for the nature of their work. So what I'm going to cover today is essentially in two sections. I'm going to cover how do you actually go about getting commissions? So that would mainly be the marketing aspect of it. And then what do you actually do once you have a commission from a business point of view? So I'll briefly talk about licenses and contracts there. Now, the first thing that I would recommend you have is a portfolio website. If a potential client comes into contact with any of your work through any means, whether it's social media, whether they see a piece that you've made, they're probably going to Google you. So it's good if they have a place that they can find you, a place they can see your work, and a place that they can contact you. You don't need a lot of bells and whistles. Really, before you have a complicated website that does lots of different things, I would recommend that you have a simple website that does two main things effectively. And that is be a place where potential clients can view your work, and where they can contact you. Really, you should have a website that just does those two things before anything else. In terms of the design, I would recommend something simple, clean, and professional. You don't want the design of the website to be too loud. You really want the artwork to be center stage. There's a reason why most galleries that you go to are clean white spaces. It's because it allows the artwork to shine. So your website rather should really do the same. So really your website should just do those things, somewhere where people can see your work, they can contact you, and you could have your links to social media on there as well. So this is a good example of a website like that. It's nice and clean and simple. Artwork is center stage. Another thing that I definitely recommend is make your gallery your homepage. Sometimes people have introductory pages that really don't do anything, or you can have a homepage, but if it's not really doing anything other than being a homepage, I would just drop people straight into your gallery, because the vast majority of people that are coming to your website are coming to your website to see your artwork. And you really want to put as few steps between them and what they're trying to access as possible. I'm sure we're all aware of how little patience we have for web pages loading. So you just want to get them there as quickly as possible. So really, a website just gives you also a place to direct people with any further marketing that you're doing. You can always direct them to your website where they can see more work and contact you. So if you have a nice website, you've got beautiful work on there, and people can't really hire you if they don't know that you exist. And so a lot of what you need to do with your marketing is to get your work in front of people who can potentially hire you. If you have been around for a while, then that helps. It gets easier because you've developed relationships with clients and with other professionals. You also have work that is out there that is doing some advertising for you. But if you're a young artist, it's going to require quite a lot of legwork from you to begin with. Now, of course, I can't talk about marketing in our current time without touching on social media. There are multiple online platforms. They give you access to an enormous audience, worldwide audience, and often for free, or at least free in monetary terms. It allows you to post your work. You can post smaller bits of work. You can post process shots or photographs at exhibitions and events. So it allows you to get people interested in your practice. Now, there are lots of resources online or even courses that you can take to help you up your social media game. So I'm not going to talk too much about it, but I'll just give you some of my general tips and thoughts on social media. So for artists, I think really Instagram currently is probably the best platform. A few reasons for that are it's really built around images. Images are at the heart of it. So it's a great visual platform. It's fairly simple and straightforward to use. It gives you access to that international artistic community. And there are different things like hashtags and different interactions that make your work more discoverable. So some of the tips I would give you for Instagram are: one, to post consistently. So one of the main reasons for this is the algorithm that Instagram runs on. The more that people interact with your posts, the more your posts will be pushed out to more people's feeds. I hope that makes sense. The more that you get likes or comments or shares on your posts, the more feeds that Instagram is going to push your post out to. So you want to make sure that you're posting fairly consistently. That doesn't mean you need to post every day, but if you're posting 2 or 3 times a week, that consistency will help with the interaction, and then more people will see your work. There's also a kind of reciprocal nature to social media. So you definitely want to be interacting with people. If you're liking other people's posts, if you're commenting, if you're perhaps even sharing their work on your stories, then people will reciprocate. That gets more interaction on your posts, which means your work is getting pushed out to more people. Hashtags, you obviously want to be using hashtags. I'm sure you're all familiar with them, but if it's something that you don't really think about and you just sort of throw a couple on there, then it's definitely worth taking a little bit of time just to do some research. Let's say, for instance, you are a sculptor. If you were to just Google best hashtags or most popular hashtags sculptor, I'm sure you'll find some great suggestions of hashtags that more people are following. And then you can use those to make your posts more effective. Also, if there are hashtags that you're using frequently, then save them so you can just copy and paste them in there and make things a little bit quicker for yourself. So with social media, as artists, we tend to present ourselves in a slightly more informal way, and that's absolutely fine. You know, we're not lawyers, we're artists, but you still want to make sure that you're presenting yourself in a professional way, because ultimately you want other professionals to see you as a professional. So whilst it might be more informal, I definitely recommend that you're not straying into unprofessional territory. And if you are somebody who likes to post a lot on social media in a personal capacity, then I would recommend maybe you have a separate account that is your artist account, your professional account, so you can keep those things separate. Now, of course, there are other social media platforms for you to be using. Facebook can be quite good for events, but personally, I think a Facebook page has a lot of tools and functions that you don't really use. and the page can be quite cluttered. So I don't really tend to use that. Twitter does offer the same sort of international network for you, or international community. But again, it's not really built with images at its core. It's not necessarily a visual platform. So it can be good for interacting with potential clients and other professionals. But I prefer Instagram for actually posting work. Now, a lot of it does come down to personal preference. There are apps that you can use, or tools you can use, that will allow you to post, and that will then send that post out to multiple platforms, things like Hootsuite, or Facebook has its native creative studio tool. Personally, I like to try and keep things simple. I would rather just do one thing and try and do it well than spread myself thin across several platforms. But if you're somebody who's quite good at social media and you enjoy that, then you might want to use something like Hootsuite so that you can cover several bases. And the last thing I'll mention on social media is Behance, just because Behance is quite a good mixture of aspects of a portfolio website and social media. So it gives you a portfolio page, nice clean design for you to show your artwork. It allows you to organize your work by projects. You can use things like hashtags and categories to make your work more discoverable. A lot of graphic designers like Behance, but there are lots of other freelance artists on there as well. So if you're somebody who doesn't necessarily want to build a whole website, or necessarily likes social media, which I don't particularly enjoy social media, then this could be a good medium for you. Okay.
Philip, one quick question before we head on to more physical sort of marketing. A question from the chat box. When you say post consistently, how many times per day or week should we be posting?
So I would say if you're posting 2 to 3 times a week, that's consistent enough. You don't need to be posting every day. One good thing that you can do, though, which is something I'll mention later on, is schedule your posts. So you're not posting ad hoc. You could have a particular day of the week that you sit down and schedule your posts for that week. And then there's always the opportunity that if something comes up, you can just sort of post that at the time as well.
Thanks, Philip. Yeah, I know we do that here at Book Art, so great. Great tips. Thank you.
So social media is really a stage. It's an access to a big audience. There are ways to make your work more discoverable, but there's not necessarily any guarantee that amongst that audience are people who might hire you or can hire you. So whilst it is a very useful tool, it can be good to complement a social media presence with something that's a bit more targeted. And within the illustration industry, a very tried and true method of doing that are mailers, which is essentially sending examples of your work and your contact details and a small message to potential clients. So there are a couple of ways to do that. There's the more traditional method, which is sending something physically through the mail, or there's the more contemporary method, which is sending an email. So with a physical mailer for illustration, there's no strict format, but a tried and true method is a postcard. You would essentially send a postcard with what you consider to be your best piece of artwork on the front. And then on the back would just be your contact information. So your website, your email, your phone number, if you want to include that, you don't have to. And then I would recommend a short message as well that just says, hello, my name is, I'm an illustrator, I do this kind of work, please feel free to reach out. Very basic thing like that. Now, like I said, there's no strict format, so postcards are kind of tried and true, but you can see here this person is in a large sort of concertina fold out piece, or this person has a sort of fold out poster with their information on there as well. One thing I would recommend, though, is use a piece of existing work for if you're sending marketing like this out. The reason is you want to use what you consider to be your best work or your most popular work. And if you're sitting down to make some work specifically for marketing, what you're essentially doing is saying, I'm going to sit down now and make the best piece I've ever made. which I think as creatives, we can all agree is not the most conducive way to making your best work. So I would recommend picking a piece of existing work. Now, there are pros and cons to these different approaches. With sending something physical, hopefully that shows a little bit more care and effort, and you're hoping that they will hold on to that. Some of the cons, though, are it's obviously time consuming to print these things and mail them. And also there are costs to the printing and the mailing. With an email version, it's essentially the same thing. You are just sending usually 1 to 3 examples of what you think is your best work, along with your contact details and a short message. This is an example of an email that I have sent out in the past. And the good thing with this is a lot of it's, you can link it all, so people can just click and go straight through to your website. Pros and cons with the emailers, it is definitely cheaper. Once you have set up your system for doing it, subsequent emails are a lot quicker to do. Also, you can track data, so you can actually tell if people have, well, you can tell if an email is bounced, you can tell if it's been opened, you can tell if people have clicked through to your website. That can be helpful, or it can drive you insane. So be cautious about going down that particular rabbit hole. The cons are, as we all know, we all get bombarded with emails every day. It's very easy to ignore them and delete them. Perhaps having something physical that somebody has sent you, it's a little harder for people to throw that in the recycling bin. So really, there's pros and cons with each. I would actually recommend doing both. But also art directors, which is who illustrators will be contacting, each to their own. Some prefer email, some prefer physical mail. If you are sending emails, then MailChimp is a really good system for doing that. It allows you to use a template so you can embed your artwork so it looks like this. So you're not sending just a text email with some attachments. It allows you to build client lists. You can have the links so everybody can click through. And as I mentioned, you can track all of that data as well and see which are being opened or if any are bouncing. It's also free for up to 2,000 contacts or 12,000 emails per month. So you can actually get a lot of use out of MailChimp for free. So both with social media and with any sort of direct marketing like that you're doing, I would definitely recommend that you schedule it, that you try and streamline it, and that you automate any processes that you can. Don't just rely on motivation or when you feel like it to kind of do these things, because consistency is key for both of these things. So it's definitely worth investing time in setting up your system to try and make it as easy and streamlined as possible for all subsequent posts that you're doing. Definitely use organizational tools, use spreadsheets to keep all of your clients' information or potential clients' information organized, and set up reminders and calendars so you know, okay, this week I need to send out my mailers, or that, say, every Thursday I sit down and I do my 3 social media posts for the week. Okay. It's definitely consistency is key. Okay, so just a couple more things to cover with marketing. How much time do we have? I feel like a lot has gone already.
So we are at about, what is it? 5:58 now, almost 6, another 10, 15 minutes or so. That's all right.
Okay, that's good. Okay, thought I'd run out there. Okay, so a couple more things with marketing. One is networking. So definitely, if you're able to exhibit your own work or take part in exhibitions, but even just getting out to exhibitions of other people's work or attending events, meeting somebody in person, having some sort of interaction is always much more memorable than receiving an email or a postcard. And you really never know who you're talking to. So sometimes when I see that a friend of mine has worked with a particular client, I might ask them, how did you get that gig? How did that happen? And so frequently the answer is that they knew a person from a previous job, or they met somebody at a particular event, or they were recommended by somebody they met somewhere. So a lot of it really is who you know. So definitely get out to exhibitions and events. It might seem unlikely that that one person you met at an event is your next client, but if you're going to an exhibition or event every month and you meet several people, then those odds increase. So definitely take some of your business cards, go and meet people, speak to them. Sometimes younger artists can be a little bit apprehensive about giving their business card. Don't be, it's absolutely fine. Just as the conversation is ended, you just say, it's been a pleasure to meet you or talk to you. Here's my business card, feel free to reach out. It's that simple. And you know, most people are just going to take it, even if they don't want it. Nobody is going to throw it back in your face, so don't be worried about it. Another thing that you can do is competitions. So it doesn't really matter that much if you win, there's still good reasons to do it. So organizations that run competitions will frequently promote the work either through an exhibition that they hold. They might print an annual with the work in. They might promote the work through social media. They might promote the work on their websites. And it's not just for the winners. They might promote the work of runners-up, of honorable mentions. They may promote the short list. They may promote the long list. So it can definitely still be worth your while to do that, even if you don't win. Which is good, because the odds are you won't win, which isn't really a comment on any one artist. It's just that if there are lots of people entering, you are one person. But there's definitely still reasons to enter these things. A couple of things to bear in mind, though. Is there an entry fee? Quite often there is. It's usually not prohibitively expensive, but sometimes it's a not insubstantial amount of money. So definitely check that. And also just check if it's requiring you to make work specifically for the competition. So a lot of these, you can just send existing work. If it's requiring you to make work for the competition, then you really just need to consider whether it is worth the investment of your time to do that. Because it's great for the company, because they get lots of free work and then they get to pick whichever one they want. But for you, you just need to make sure, even if you're not going to win or get exposure for it, is it worth your time to make that work? So that hopefully covers marketing. And if anybody has any questions about that, I know I'm going quite quickly, I'll be happy to answer them. So next, we'll just cover what happens when you actually get the commission from a potential client. So one of the first things we'll talk about is how would you figure out what to charge a particular client. So this is another area where I think illustration differs from people's expectations. Illustrators don't charge a flat rate for a particular type of project, and we don't charge, say, a daily or hourly rate. Instead, illustrators charged based on the value that it represents to the client. So in order to explain that a little more, we'll have to talk about licenses. So the majority of the time, an illustrator is not actually selling their artwork to the client. What you're actually selling is a license, which gives that client the permission to use your work within a certain set of parameters. So frequently, the illustrator retains the ownership of the artwork, they retain the copyright, and what they're selling is a license that allows that client to use the image only for the uses specified within that contract. So the way that you would calculate an illustration contract is based on four main things. First of all, the usage. So what is it actually being used for? Is it a small interior illustration for a magazine, or is it a wraparound book cover for potentially the next bestseller? You're going to charge more for one than the other. The territory. So is it only being used in the US, or is it being used in other countries as well? Again, the more territories that it's going to cover, the more you want to charge, because the more value that represents to the client. Duration. So is it going to last for 1 month? Is it going to last for 5 years? Again, the more time they're able to use that image, the more you should be charging. And then exclusivity. So if I own the image and I'm selling a license to somebody to use that image, there's absolutely nothing to stop me selling another license for the same image to another client. That's a perfectly legitimate thing to do. However, a client might want to be the only person that is using that image for the duration of the contract, in which case they would want an exclusive license. And again, you would charge more for that. So like I said, it's really based on the value that it represents to the client. So you have a couple of examples down there of different licenses. So a USA license, 1 month magazine, not exclusive, versus a worldwide license, 5 years for a whiskey label exclusive. You're definitely going to charge more for that second one than the first one. Okay, and then the last thing will be contracts, just quickly. So young artists can definitely feel intimidated by contracts. Contracts definitely can get very complicated, but they actually don't need to be complicated. And really, you shouldn't be signing anything you don't understand. So ultimately, either the client is going to provide a contract or you are going to provide a contract. If the client is somebody like a publisher who is used to hiring illustrators, used to hiring freelance artists, then they will provide the contract. They'll probably have one they want to use, and that's absolutely fine. But just bear in mind, you shouldn't be signing anything you don't understand. If a client is providing the contract, it is incumbent upon them to explain anything you do not understand. Okay, so you should always ask, because they have to be able to explain it to you. And if you don't understand it, then don't sign it. And again, the nature of the contract, the content of the contract really comes down to just you and the client. So it's totally up for negotiation. So if there's something in there you don't agree with, or you want to try and adjust, then you can try and negotiate that. So this is the last thing now. If the client does not provide the contract, then you will be providing the contract. There are lots of templates out there that you could use or adapt. For illustrators, I recommend using the AOI template contract, which is the Association of Illustrators. They are based in the UK, so this contract does have some sections which are UK specific, but it's very easy to adapt for a US market. And again, I won't go through everything that will be contained within here, but some of the basic things that you want to think about. And if you're a freelance artist in any capacity, hopefully this gets you thinking about certain things you would want to put in a contract to protect your interests. So you'd want to have the delivery dates in there in the contract. Don't agree to a delivery date you don't think you can hit, okay? Because if you miss that deadline, everybody loses. You would also state the nature of the license within the contract, and also the copyright. So it's always a good idea to state the copyright. So if the copyright's staying with you, then put that in the contract that the artist retains the copyright to the images. You'd also want the fee, so whatever it is that they are paying you that you've agreed upon. And credits is a good idea to put in there. So wherever the client is going to use the artwork, are they going to credit you? Are they going to put your name next to it? That's a good idea to have that in there, because then any piece of artwork you're putting out there that has your name attached is helping to advertise your work to more potential clients. So the contract itself usually isn't that complex. Usually the place where it gets really complex is in the terms and conditions. And there's just a few things that I would recommend considering. So one is the terms of payment. So if you are working on a project that's going to take you 3 days, then it's probably okay for you to just get paid once you deliver that artwork. However, if it's going to take you 4 months, then you still need to pay your bills during those 4 months. So you might want to structure that payment so that you get 50% on the acceptance of the commission, and then 50% upon delivery of the artwork. Or if it's a very long project, you might structure it so that you get certain payments upon delivery of certain stages of the project. Again, it's really up to you to negotiate that between you and the client. But definitely a good thing to think about. A kill fee or a rejection fee. So again, if we take that example of 4 months, if you have done 2 months work on a project and then the client, for whatever reason, kills the project or decides they don't want your artwork, you want to get paid for the work that you've done up to that stage. You don't want to walk away with nothing. So a kill fee is really just stating if that happens, then you will get some form of compensation that is specified in that contract. So that could be just a percentage of the total fee Or again, if it's a longer project, you might want to tie it to certain stages of the work that have been delivered. The last thing I'll mention is just stages and revisions. So with an illustrator, you're going back and forth with the client. There's usually several stages from thumbnails to rough drafts to the final thing. So it might be a good idea to state how many stages of delivery and how many stages of revision there will be, just so you prevent the situation where a client keeps coming back and asking for more and more edits, and then you're having to do that work essentially for free. So you would just put in the contract that any further stages of revision will require further considerations. And that's essentially you saying you probably need more time and maybe more money. So that has been a bit of a whirlwind tour, but hopefully you found some of that information helpful. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Philip, I'm on mute, right? Yes. I don't see any questions in the chat box now. Perfect. Well, we're getting some that's very helpful. And there'll be time for questions at the end too. Oh, wait, one question. Can you restate the source of that simple but perfect contract? I think it was the association.
Yeah, AOI. So it's the Association of Illustrators. It is based in the UK. But if you join the Association of Illustrators, they have a ton of helpful resources for promotion, but also for the whole legal side of the business. So they'll help you to figure out a good fee for something. They'll help you with any sort of copyright issues. The only issue is it is UK specific. So some of the laws might vary and some of the general sort of market value might vary. Unfortunately, there isn't a good US counterpart to that. But there are a couple of websites that are helpful as well. Something I found recently is called lightbox.info. So that's LITEBOX.info. They have a lot of really helpful resources for the legal side of things.
Thank you, Phil.
Okay.
Oh, someone said thanks. That would have helped a commission that got killed midstream.
Oh no, I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, since there's no other questions in the chat right now, I'm sure there'll be some more later. I'll pop it over to Nicole. Thank you, Philip.
Philip, I think you might need to end your screen share.
Ah, sorry. Okay.
I'm not sorry. It might just be my Zoom ineptitude. Forgive me. You know, I'm laughing because I feel like the sort of cardinal rule for freelance artists is always get the terms in writing and always get the money up front, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like that could be a great summation of that contract that you just showed us. And I did want to add that the American Institute of Graphic Artists is a really good resource as well, AIGA. They're not specific to illustrators. It's largely centered around graphic design, but they do have a lot of really good like legal resources and things of that nature.
Yeah, there's the pricing and ethical guidelines book.
Yeah.
Helps with some estimates of, I would say for illustration, they tend to estimate a little bit on the low end.
Good to know. So for now, we're going to move on. Philip, this is really great information, though. Thank you so much. And I'm excited to introduce to you all Melissa Reckon, who's a member of the Book Arts team and is our special guest tonight. Melissa, or Mel for short, implements and oversees Book Arts communications and outreach, preparing press releases, marketing materials, e-newsletters, social media engagement, basically everything you see on the printed page or the screen involving Book Arts happenings, and also runs our brick and mortar and online shops. All right, Mel, kick us off.
Hi, everyone. I think I'm unmuted now. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. Yeah, Philip, that was really great. As the person who handles our organization's social media and marketing, I was also feverishly taking notes. I think it's important to note, too, that like with the nature of marketing, it's always changing, especially social media. So that was really helpful. But yeah, so I'm just going to briefly talk about our consignment program here at the Book Arts Center. And I'm going to share my screen just while I'm speaking. to show you guys, for those who haven't been here before, to show you guys just what our shop looks like and all the fun things inside. So feel free to do some shopping as you're listening to me. But so yeah, a key component of our mission here at Book Arts is to provide opportunities for artists to sustain their creative practice by earning income. And one of those avenues is our artist consignment program. Here you'll see photos of our shop here, and this program provides a space for working artists, designers, illustrators, and we currently house over 90 artists and counting to sell their work under a split commission agreement. So this helps to support their financial and creative goals while also providing funds for our organization so that we can continue providing more artist opportunities like this. We both outwardly seek artists and welcome applications, and artists come to me at any level of their career and experience. So whether that means they have a fully reputable brand and marketing strategy, website, online store, social media presence, and they just want to add us to their growing list of retailers, or they can be freshly emerging artists who have just learned screen print or letterpress in one of our classes and are curious about setting foot into the retail sphere. So what I do is I meet with each consignment artist before they start selling with us to review their merchandising and marketing strategies and to help them achieve the best possible sales success for their items. And because of the high commission split, artists can maximize their sales potential without the lofty overhead of owning and operating a store. So whether that's a brick and mortar like us here at Book Arts or an online marketplace. So my initial intake process with consignment artists vary depending on their expertise. But the first and most crucial thing that we discuss is the shop's target audience and how that influences their provided product and the future product that they will hopefully be creating. So one really important thing to remember when selling in retail and also for marketing yourself in general is just to identify who your audience is. And in the retail space, that would of course be the shoppers or the customers in the store. So if the artist already has a collection of items that they are suggesting to sell, we sit down and we go through and we discuss which would we think would perform well in our space, specifically as it relates to our main audience. And of course, this varies depending on retailers and platforms, which is why it's really important to get to know some retail spaces and their missions before suggesting certain products. So yeah, I offer insight into who our typical audience and customer is, what their spending level is, what their interests are, and their intentions of shopping at our store. And this is what helps the artist to identify products that will have the most sales potential, while also giving ideas for future products to make, along with helping the artist to establish a pricing structure for each of their items. The next biggest thing that I discuss with artists is about virtual merchandising and packaging of wares, which honestly may not seem as important, but it truly is incredibly impactful, just how much the sales of an item depend on how well it's presented. I suggest things like adding plastic sleeving, and maybe some cardboard backing for things like prints, and then also establishing some brand identity for the artist with artist information alongside the items, as well as even just some context on how the item was made, what process was used, and any other good stuff about the piece. And this is what creates visual continuity and helps to elevate the quality of products in the buyer's mind. And something also that's really important about visual continuity, it's became increasingly important as I also have been working closely with our online store, because due to the pandemic, more than half of our sales this year came from our online store, and we've had a lot of experience visually representing handmade product and how to do that in a consistent way. So if someone's inventory is greater than one, so say they have a lot of multiples of prints to sell, multiples of cards or t-shirts, it's really important to remember that the shopper who is purchasing your item is expecting that the item that they see in the online listing is the item that's delivered to them. So it's even when something's handmade and has that nuance of you know, a little bit of different variation, it's really important to be clear with your customers and to give them that expectation of what they're purchasing is. Sorry, I got caught up sharing the screen. What they're purchasing is what's going to be delivered to them. So we see a lot of that in our online store, just because some of our hand printed items may look a little differently than one another. So it's really important to indicate to the buyer that there might be some variations, or alternatively, when creating your product, trying to be really aware of creating somewhat identical looking pieces. So looking at the time, all right, so then after the consignment goods hit the shelves, both physically and virtually in the online store, we encourage artists to maintain a relationship with me as the shopkeep, and also any other shopkeeps that they are working with. We encourage them to update their inventory frequently, and also engage in conversation about observations of how customers are interacting with their products. So this can help to determine any changes in the designs or in the pricing to best fit that target audience from the shop. So this way we are both in the know to follow the performance of each product, while also keeping tabs on shopping trends, as those can obviously change depending on the season and you know, holidays or anything happening in the retail space. So this is what helps the artists reach their maximum earning potential, while also making informed decisions as they are developing and creating new products. I also really recommend artists to seek other spaces for opportunities to sell their goods. This helps to gain awareness for both your products and you as an artist. It helps you get seen, and so people know you exist, as to Philip's notion. And it helps you engage with multiple different audiences and ultimately grow your business, brand recognition, and your earning potential. So in addition to the artist consignment program here at Book Arts, we're also workshopping a design licensing program for illustrators, which is, you know, very helpful for this talk here today. And we also have been starting a shop residency program for artists working in our studio facilities. They're able to use our materials and our stock to create retail products, so that they can gain experience designing and printing shop merchandise, but they don't have to have any overwhelming inventory demands or large upfront costs. So aside from all of these programs at Book Arts, we also provide opportunities for artists to earn income that don't require being hired by an organization. So this is where an artist can be an independent contractor through teaching classes as a teaching artist, printing some of our custom orders for our custom printing division. We print business cards and wedding invitations and things like that. So we contract artists to help us with those orders. And we also call for artists to exhibit and sell work in our gallery. So these are just some of the ways that you can get involved here at Book Arts. And I am just looking into the chat right now because I know we're a little late for time, but I just wanted to leave it up for questions at this point, and I want to thank everybody for coming and listening to this fun talk. Thank you, Philip. And let us know what questions you have regarding involvement at Book Arts, but also segueing back to Philip's talk, any questions that you had for Philip and illustration as freelance. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, Mel. I'm gonna, let's see, Philip, I'm gonna move the spotlight over to you, and then too, as more questions come in, if there's some for Mel too. We did have quite a few just before Mel was speaking, some great questions actually. Let me look here. So questions about portfolio sites, Philip. What are a couple sites for portfolio setup? Should they buy the domain and get rid of the .weebly or whatever? Or, you know, is it okay to have a .wix, .weebly? Should you really commit to that .com?
So I would recommend using something that is like a CMS. So CMS is a content management system those websites like Squarespace or Wix or Adobe Portfolio that essentially offer templates, allow you to construct the website. You don't have to do any coding, which I think Weebly is very much like that. I'm not as familiar with Weebly. Really, the only reason you would switch is if there's something that the website doesn't do that you want it to do. And in terms of a domain, it is helpful to have a simple domain. If you have a complicated name that's often mispronounced or misremembered, it can often be good to have a different domain that is something. So for instance, I might have Philip Paints or Philip Draws or something like that. That can be something that's easier for people to remember and not get wrong. But I don't think a .weebly is necessarily going to be too difficult for people to remember. So I think you're probably fine with that.
And as for your portfolio, do you include both professional and personal art together, or do you keep them separate? What do you suggest?
You definitely can include both. One of the reasons you might want to separate them is if they look quite different. So one of the things you want with your portfolio is some sense of consistency. If you have, so I'd recommend for somebody starting out 10 to 15 of your best pieces. Now, if you have 15 pieces and they all look dramatically different from one another, then a client that's coming and taking a look at that portfolio doesn't know what they're going to get if they hire you. So it's a good idea to have some consistency so that they can look at your work and have some idea of what they might get if they hire you. So if they look significantly different, you might want to separate them. If they're not different, you could keep them together. But especially if you're a young artist starting out as well, you probably don't have as much professional work. So if you were to separate them, then your portfolio for the professional side might look a little slim.
And as for your website, do you post your resume on your website or just your work?
So for illustrators, you don't tend to include that much of a resume. You're primarily hired based on your work itself. If you want to include that, you absolutely can, but it wouldn't really look like your standard CV. It would more just be a list of previous clients, or maybe a list of exhibitions that you've been involved with.
Thank you. And then a question that might also be to you, Philip, and then also Mel, since you work in the custom realm as well, Mel. Where was it here? Well, first, are invoices required? Oh, here we go. How would you resolve a commission stuck in the revision stage? I've had one ongoing for a year, and when progress is made, the objective shifts. And then to piggyback just off of that one, for commissions, are invoices optimal?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. So, I mean, that's one of the reasons you usually want to use a contract. I know that sometimes people are working with somebody who's kind of more local, or it's a smaller commission, they don't want to use a contract. It's always a good idea to use a contract. It's there to protect you and to protect them. And it just means that you're both clear on what you're agreeing to. And they don't have certain expectations that they haven't voiced that they are expecting. So, I mean, that's where things like having a stated stages of revision would help you with that, and also having stated deadlines. But as to what you can do now, it's difficult without knowing a bit more about the commission, but you could just, try as politely as you can to state that, it's been going on, and that you have other commitments, so that you would like to set some deadlines and stages of revision now. And that hopefully would be able to progress the project.
Thank you. I think that'll help.
And you mentioned invoices. I'm not sure what you mean by, are they optimal? But really, an invoice is really simple. Essentially, once you've delivered the artwork, you would send them an invoice, and it just restates certain facts about the commission, and just basically says that now that you've delivered the artwork, payment is due within 30 days is a very common way to do that. So yeah, it can help to send an invoice. And again, even with smaller commissions, making a contract, using a contract, sending invoices, it helps you just to practice those things as well and get used to them.
Thank you. Some really good convo going on in the chat right now regarding all these things we're talking about too. And I'll post the recording tomorrow and then also post the chat box text underneath that too. So if you're scrambling to like copy and paste anything, don't worry, you'll get all this info later. Perfect. Well, thanks, Philip. I think we're coming just about up to time. I don't see any additional questions in the chat. I know I have a million swirling in my head, but I'll just rewatch this tomorrow. I'll pop it over to Nicole and she'll close us out. Thank you very much, Philip.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mel, too. I mean, I work with you all the time, so I know what you're saying, but.
Yeah, thank you, Mel and Philip. This was all so helpful and so interesting. And I feel like, it's always just so energizing to hear about all of the different ways that artists can take their talents and their abilities and apply them to all of these different ways to sustain themselves as an independent business. And I know that's a big component of the LEA program at Daemen. That's a big part about workforce development and the arts. And it's just so exciting to me to be, hearing, like being part of a conversation where we're talking about the arts as workforce development. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for joining us for the second of 3 virtual offerings in the Daemen College Speaker Series hosted by Book Arts and faculty from Daemen. The new LEA program is dedicated to advancing leadership opportunities in the arts. And we have one more upcoming session on June 23rd about branding for artists. So you saw the email that Philip put together with his logo and his name on it. Mel is talking about continuity and branding and packaging. Our next session is going to be all about creating a visual brand for yourself. So make sure you visit our website and register there for free. And in the meantime, be sure to check out our guest blog post from Memory Fox, who is sharing tips on search engine optimization for artists, because like Philip said, clients can't hire you if they don't know you exist. We also encourage you to sign up for our email list and stay up to date on all of Book Arts artist opportunities, including an open call for exhibiting artists and resident artists due very soon. We are also open in person 3 days a week, so stop by and say hello. And finally, please keep an eye on your email for a survey following the end of this event. Everyone who fills out the survey will receive a coupon code for 10% off in our online store, and you'll be entered to win a giveaway for a Book Arts Center membership. Thank you all so much for joining us. Have a wonderful long weekend. We'll see you soon.